Barnyard animals are a big hit with little kids and their parents. The cow says moo, the chicken says cluck cluck, then we sit down at the dinner table and eat them. It can lead to very awkward conversations with very young people. That's where our next guest has stepped up to help. Sarah Elton is a food journalist and academic, and her new book is called Meatless, a fresh look at what you eat. And it brings her to our studio tonight. Nice to have you back here. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Glad to hear it. Okay, are you trying to encourage people essentially to cut meat from their diets entirely?
Ooh, that's a tough question. For kids, when I write for children, I try not to be dogmatic. So I don't want to tell kids what to do. Believe it or not, including my own, at least part of the time. So what I'm trying to do here is promote food literacy, which is telling kids as much as I can about their food. So everything to do with their food, how their food is produced, where it comes from, and then what to do with it once it arrives in your kitchen.
If not eliminated from their diets, would you urge them to cut back on the amount of meat they intake?
Well, I think yes. In today, we should all be cutting back the amount of meat that we eat. And this is me speaking as the daughter of two people who own beef cattle.
And what do they think of that advice?
You know what, I never asked them. Maybe a little sensitive.
I think subconsciously you don't want to ask them because you know what's going to come back at you. They're probably not going to love that advice. But this advice in this book, in your particular book, I mean, this is aimed at children.
Yes.
How come?
Because I'm a mom, I have two daughters, and I noticed that kids are talking a lot about food. My daughter had a little birthday party over the weekend, and I was eavesdropping and listening to these children talk about food in the way that I feel like the parents talk about food a lot. They're asking questions, discussing how delicious things were, what do you like, what do you do? So kids are really aware about food. Food is in our zeitgeist right now. This is a prolongated food moment, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So kids are reflecting this. They want information, and I wanted to give it to them.
Do your kids, when they go out for a meal or something, they take a picture of everything they eat and then put it up on Instagram or something?
Well, I restrict my children's access.
Good for you.
So
good idea. Meat, however, I mean, I appreciate that you think it's important for us to consume less meat, but it has been historically very important to human evolution, right? Do you want to take us through that?
Absolutely. When I started writing this book, I thought I was writing a book about vegetarianism. And I quickly realized that no, you can't talk about not eating meat without understanding why we eat meat in the first place. And meat has been so important to humans, well, since the beginning, because it's so nutrient dense. And especially when we made the transition from being hunter-gatherers to farmers, we needed food security, and animals provided a lot of that food security. So yes, we've really been dependent on meat, but we don't live in those circumstances right now. We don't still require such dependency on meat. And also, we're eating a lot more meat than those people did.
Do you eat meat yourself?
I do eat meat.
You do?
I do. You know what, I'm a very conflicted meat eater, and my relationship to eating meat depends on what I've been reading. So the more I read about animal studies and thinking about our relationship to animals, the less I eat meat and the more I distance myself from those ideas. I can perform that cognitive dissonance and eat meat more without feeling confused.
Let's break it down. Chicken you eat, of course.
Yeah, I do eat chicken.
Steak?
Yes. You know what, even my parents' steak, that is what I will eat the least. If you invited me to your house and you served me steak, I would eat it. But I will not order it at a restaurant, and I don't remember the last time we cooked steak at home.
And the reason for that is why?
It's very aesthetic.
It tastes so good.
You know what, I agree, it tastes good, but there's something about,
really.
You know what, I think so much about what it means to eat the flesh of another living thing, and so when I see a slab of flesh like that, I really have to confront what it means to be someone who eats the meat.
Okay, but if you're going to be that political about it, shouldn't you just come out and say, okay, I'm a vegetarian and I'm not going to have any more, I'm not going to eat anybody else's flesh?
Well, one of the things that I thought about when I was writing the book for kids and how do I communicate it is there's also all these other cultural reasons why we eat meat. It would be really hard in my family to be vegetarian. And my husband is more vegetarian than I am, and I know that his mother describes him as being a very fussy eater. So in terms of home cultures, there's a lot you have to confront. That's saying some people do it with ease, and some people in their home culture they are vegetarian, so they don't face the same thing. And so the book is about representing this diversity of experience with regard to meat, and how maybe those of us who are in a place where it's harder to say we're going to be be vegetarian, how do you say, I'm going to eat less meat?
Are you the prime chef in your home?
I am the prime chef.
You are. So there's
yes.
only so many different ways you can make lentils, right?
Oh, you know what? There are so many ways to make lentils.
I don't believe it.
Lentils, you have to come over because, well, I even provide a menu of all the different things you could eat in a week. Lentils, beans, those are my favorite. I could go on about pulses. They're delicious.
Do you think, we alluded to this in the intro, do you think when kids go into Swiss Chalet and they got a piece of chicken on their plate, do they know where that meat comes from?
I think that depends on if anybody told them. So no, I think a lot of us don't. And as I said earlier, I can also sort of shut off the idea that what's that thing I'm eating has had a whole, often not a very pleasant life in an industrial farming system. Yeah. But my kids know that where their meat came from, and my older daughter has always been okay with the idea that is a living thing, whereas my other daughter, she goes from rejecting meat to eating, thinking it's okay, because she struggled. She was, in fact, I once was on a farm where I killed a chicken, and I opened the book with that anecdote. I didn't know I was going to kill a chicken, but one thing led to the other, and I did, and my daughter was with me, and I think that marked both of us quite a lot. So she's the one who's been, will I eat it? Will I not eat it?
Because I'm wondering how that conversation goes where you were, that afternoon at a petting zoo and then that evening you're having lamb for dinner. How do you have that conversation with your kids?
Well, I think we just tell them. I think it's important that they know because it's an opportunity for them to be an empathetic human being. It's an opportunity for them to to know something about where their food comes from. We should all know it is an ethical issue to eat meat. Wherever you fall on that spectrum, you should have the information. You should give that to your I think you should give that to your children so they can at least know. They can be food literate.
I actually was at an event on the weekend and ended up at a table with somebody who became a vegetarian at the age of 12. She just decided, I don't want to eat any more living things in that way. And, she's whatever now, 30, maybe I think cruising in on 30. So it's been a long time. It was not a haphazard decision, and she stuck with it. I never really got a very strong sense, though, about why she made that decision. Do you have a good understanding about why children decide to be vegetarians?
Well, one thing I did was interview kids who are vegetarians to see what it would be like to be them, and so I could pass their words on to other kids. And one girl actually was singing that. She remembered the moment when she was singing Mary Had a Little Lamb. And then she realized, hey, wait a second, we just had lamb for dinner, and she's never eaten meat since. And she was a toddler when that happened, a really little kid. And her parents are such that they accepted that and respected that. Other kids, well, they became vegetarians because I think a lot of it is like the idea of eating a cute animal is surprising. And I think as they get older, like my daughter who eats meat very happily, she'll say, but I want to make sure that the animals I eat led a good life. And so I think as they get older, the political side to vegetarianism manifests, but earlier in life, it's just the idea of eating that cute animal, but can be unappealing to some. That said, my older daughter once asked my mother when we were eating rabbit at Easter if it was the Easter bunny, and she wasn't joking. So for her, she was okay with it.
No sweat.
No sweat.
No issue
yeah.
there. Well, how about, is there any ethical quandary in trying to raise your children to be vegans?
So I think that's a tough question.
Let's just establish. So we're talking like no eggs, no fish, nothing, right?
Yeah, no honey. I interviewed 2 kids who come from a vegan family, and so they have to bring food when they go to a birthday party. So that is a decision one would make as a parent for your family, in the same way I make ethical decisions for my kids every day. But I think I'd flip that question and say, is it ethical for us to eat so much meat at a time when we know that livestock contributes 14% of greenhouse gas emissions, and that meat is so critically helping to contribute to climate change, and we know that climate change is actually having impact on real people's lives right now. We're not talking about future generations. I was listening to people whose homes were destroyed in the hurricanes and thinking, wow, what the decisions I make about what I eat actually have a real impact on these people who are alive on the planet at the same time as me. So I think of eating meat in terms of our communities, of us and animals, but also us and other people too.
Is there a financial imperative here? Because, I imagine there's some people watching us who don't eat meat because it's expensive to go and buy steaks or chicken or whatever like that.
Yes, it's true. You can save money by not eating meat, and when any conversation about alternative meat, we have to talk about money, because also the meat that I buy is more expensive than much of the meat that's sold, because I buy often directly from farmers who have few animals, who are having their cuts butchered in a certain way, because I want, like my sister's friend is a farmer, and so I buy a pig that I know she helped, well, she grew, and then I know it led a good life, and so I can serve that, but I also know that costs a lot more money.
Yeah. Ever run into any instances where somebody would, I don't know, like parents making their kids feel guilty or not feel guilty as a result of eating something that was once a little figure in a petting zoo or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I try as a parent never to make my kids feel guilty, even if they do something wrong. Like talk about things in a positive way, but yeah, food is an expression of who we are and our values, so I think that no matter what choices we make, we are imposing them on our kids.
You can inadvertently, I suppose, make them feel guilty about stuff like this, even though you don't mean to.
That's true. And I did hear about a vegetarian family where the kid really wanted to try a steak, and the neighbor cooked it and brought it over. The parents said, okay, we're vegetarian, that's the decision we've made, you can taste it. The neighbor brought it over, the kid got to taste it, and we'll see what happens next.
I think everybody anyway seems pretty cool about the fact that if you're ever at a kid's birthday party, you got to check with all the parents to see about allergies, and nobody wants to serve anything at a birthday party that's going to have some kid to have a, allergic reaction to something. I don't know what the sort of etiquette rules are, though, about somebody saying, my kid's a vegan, and therefore let's not make sure you're going to McDonald's or Wendy's for birthday party. What are the rules around that?
So as a parent, my experience is that kids come, like my friend just sent her child to a birthday party. It was at a park, and they had a bonfire, and he came with his little soy hot dogs. So that's how they got around that. And yeah, that's a tough one. I also have a daughter who has celiac disease, so
what does that mean?
Oh, so she can't eat wheat, she can't eat gluten, because she has a disease that means it destroys her intestine if she were to eat it. So when she goes to a birthday party, now she's older, but we'd send her with a cupcake that she can eat. So
that sounds like a reasonable thing to do. You just sort of can you bring your own food?
Bring your own food. I mean,
it's weird, but I guess.
It's weird, yeah. It's not great. She can't participate in eating with everybody else, but it's okay. She's okay.
Yeah, she won't die. That's a good thing.
That's good, yes.
Yeah. Let's bring this board up, okay, shall we? This is from Adam McDowell, writing a feature called Death to the Chicken Finger. This is from the National Post from a couple of years back. As a general rule, people who grew up in North America and are now over the age of 30 recall that when they were children, kids ate what the adults ate. Families usually dined together at the table. There might have been foods you didn't like. Depending on the rules of the house, you might have been expected to try them or even finish them. Or you might have been free not to, as long as there weren't too many foods you were refusing. Either way, it wouldn't have occurred to you that an adult was going to jump up from the table to prepare you something precisely to your liking. This is, I don't know how many times I heard my mother say it over the years, I'm not running a, what was the expression?
Fast-serve restaurant.
Exactly,
I've said it myself.
Yeah, exactly. This is not, I'm not making 4 different meals for everybody in this home. Does this happen now because of, pickiness of kids' diets?
Well, it's certainly not what I would advocate. So what I tell kids in this book is, if you are going to be different from the rest of your family and cut out meat, you have to take an active role in helping produce the food in your house. It's not for someone else to cater to your desires. So but then that's a wonderful thing, because we want kids to be able to cook from scratch too. So it's an opportunity. I really do see it as an opportunity for kids to take control of what they're eating and think about, well, how do I eat healthy food? How do I eat food that's healthy for me and the environment? And how do I cook it? How do I prepare it?
I think I remember the expression now. I'm not a short order cook.
Yes,
I'm not a short order cook. But what if you've got a kid who is starting to think about this more and actually wants to get the meat out of the diet, and you go to mom or dad or whoever does most of the cooking and say, look, I know that's what you're making, but I don't want to eat that, and here's why.
Yeah, and a kid can't my children couldn't cook dinner themselves a dinner every night. That's not practical either. So I think it's about how do you create flexibility in your meal plan. So what can you make that you can have meat as a side dish or an add-in? We know that even the Canada Food Guide, the new one that's expected out, is going to probably recommend that we all eat less meat. So maybe it's an opportunity for the whole family to cut back a bit and keep meat on the side, yet all eating together, all eating the same thing, I think is a really nice thing to do as a family. You don't want to have everybody have their own atomized meal that nobody else
Yeah, and as a general
eats.
approach, wouldn't you say that it's sort of, well, I shouldn't say, wouldn't you say? Let me ask you, is it better to encourage children to push at the edges of their comfort zone and just try all sorts of new stuff all the time?
Oh, absolutely. And that's something I do with my kids. And I would advocate, yeah, taste it again and again, because you might not like it the first time, but you could love it by taste number 5.
Is this generation the pickiest generation you've ever seen?
No.
You don't think so?
Not at all. I can't believe the kinds of foods that kids say they love. When I go out and talk to kids in schools,
Really?
they tell me all sorts of foods that I hadn't eaten maybe I grew up in Toronto, and foods that I never tasted until I was, like into my 20s.
Huh, like what?
Oh gosh, it's not, I don't know, like maybe, I'm just trying to think, pad thai might be an example.
yeah.
So I don't come from a Thai background, and I wouldn't have had access to Thai food in the same way that you can eat it in Toronto today. And that could be a 7-year-old's favorite dish,
Right.
who's not from a Thai background.
I guess there's sushi bars all over the place too.
Yes.
I could not, I mean, when I was 10, the notion of eating sushi,
Wouldn't
have happened, but today?
My mom lived in Japan, so I loved sushi as a
There you
child.
go.
But I remember I was a really weird kid, because everybody else would say, ew.
but you didn't.
No, I loved it.
Well, okay. Sarah, it's good of you to come in and help us out with this again. This is Meatless, a fresh look at what you eat. Quite a beautiful book. Ought to be read with kids, right?
Thank you. Yes.
There you go. That's Sarah Elton. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.